Hi, Year 3 and Year 4. Welcome to Music Week 5. We are still online, but you guys are doing such a good job at learning about lots and lots of new musical concepts and also with your composition. So well done and keep up the great work. Our learning intention is that we are learning to demonstrate an awareness of musical concepts and use symbol systems to represent sounds. And remember, when we're talking about symbol systems in music, we're talking about the stave, the staff, the different types of notes, the duration of the different notes. So if it's a crotchet or a minim or a quaver, we're also talking about the tempo, so how fast or how slow the music's going to be played, and how can we tell our musician or our player what the tempo is or what pace the music should be played at. We're also talking about what clef we're using. Are we using a treble clef? Are we using an alto clef? Are we using a bass clef? And how can we represent those sounds and represent that information for our, I suppose it can be a bit of your audience, but more so your musician or the person playing your music. We will be successful when we can identify some of the musical concepts we've learnt this year, when we can begin to create our own musical piece using at least one of the notes we have learnt. And it's fantastic to see that all the musical compositions that I've seen uploaded so far, they are using all of the notes that we have learnt so far this year. So that's fantastic to see. Everybody's also doing a really great job at identifying and explaining what the different notes are. So they're able to name them and then talk about or write about how long these notes are held for or what they are or what they do. And hopefully today you'll have the opportunity to begin to explore the pitch possibilities of an instrument. And we'll be doing that through the use of a virtual piano. Last week we learned a new rhythmic cell called a quaver. And remember this is here, this is a pair of quavers here. We learnt a new note and a new string, and that was G. We practiced a new rhythm with a variety of notes, and we continued with our composition. If you had time last week, you might have also started to give the rhythm a melody by putting some of the notes on the staff or the stave. And I know some of you did that, some of you didn't, which is fine. That was only if you had time and you got to it. And you may have started to experiment with an instrument or an online app to hear what the melody might sound like. We also tried to get our composition to look something like this. So you can see clearly that my composition has got 12 bars, and then you can see that I've clearly indicated the different things that we had to include. So I've got minims, I've got minim rests, I've got a time signature, I've got bar lines all throughout to separate my music, and I've got 4 beats in each bar. I've also got crotchets and crotchet rests, but I wasn't up to quavers yet, so I haven't included those quavers or those quaver rests, but you'll see with my composition today that I have included some quavers and some quaver rests as well. This week we will be revising concepts that we have already learnt. We will begin to or continue to, if you started it last week, add melody, which is the pitch, so is it a high or a low sound, to our composition. Then we're going to experiment with a virtual piano, and finally today we will create a Flipgrid video of ourselves playing our composition so far. We're just aiming to get the first 4 bars done today, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. So we know crotchets and minims are something that we've already learnt about. We know that this note here is called a crotchet. We know it's held for 1 beat and we can call it tar. We know that this here is called a crotchet rest. We know that it lasts for 1 beat and it is a crotchet's partner in silence. We know that this note here is called a minim. It's held for 2 beats and we call it tar-ar. And we know that this funny hat-looking thing here is a minim rest. It lasts for 2 minutes and it is a minim's partner in silence. This is the note or the rhythmic cell that we learnt about last week. We know that this one here by itself is a quaver. We know it's held for half a beat and we call it T. We know that we can write 2 quavers together, and when we write 2 quavers together, they become a pair of quavers. When there are 2 quavers together, they last for 1 beat, so they essentially equal 1 crotchet. We call them TT. And be careful with the quavers. I had a look at some of your videos of you guys performing your compositions last week, and some of you are rushing your quavers. Just remember not to rush your quavers. They still need to take up that whole beat. So you really need to think about how can you play them so you're still taking up that whole beat and you're not rushing and then resting for the rest of your beat. We know that this funny looking thing here, this is called a quaver rest. We know that it lasts for half a beat, and we know that it is a quavers partner in silence. So far we have learnt D, A, and G. So that's where they sit if you are reading a treble clef, if you're playing the violin. If you're playing the viola and reading the alto clef, this is your D, this is your A, this is your G, and take note of where they are on your instrument. If you're playing a cello reading bass clef, we know this is your D, this is your A, this is your G, and if you're playing the double bass, this is your D, this is your A, and this is your G.